You guys, I am convinced that this is the best Fujifilm lens that you can get right now under $400. And the best part is, it is insanely sharp. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. What's going on, you guys, man? Welcome back to another King Japes episode. Now, today I'm going to be talking about what I feel like is the best Fujifilm lens that you can purchase right now under 400 bucks. Now, there's a little asterisk next to this, and that is 400 bucks used, because brand new, I think they're going for around 450 bucks. But if you do a little bit of eBay hunting and shopping around on like used markets, you can definitely find this lens anywhere between 300 to 350 bucks. Now, the lens of choice that we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than the 23mm f2.WR. Now, I know it looks a little different right now because I have a square lens hood on it right here, but the 23 f2 is a couple of years old right now, and I've been able to try a ton of different lenses like the 18mm f2, the Viltrox 41.2, the 35mm, the 50, and it seems like out of all of them, this one is the best when it comes to performance or value. And I'm going to be sharing some images and talk a little bit about my experience with the lens and why I personally, again, think it is the best lens you can get right now for your Fujifilm camera. All right, man, so first things first, let's mount it onto my X Pro 2. This is a gigantic lens right here, and let's start talking about it, man. So the 23mm f2 here on my X Pro 2 is an effective equivalent of like a 35mm lens. First and foremost, 35mm is a very good focal length for pretty much everything. You can make some really nice portraits with it. You can use it for street photography, for travel, for landscapes, whatever you want. And for the last 2 to 3 years, this has been my main lens for my Fujifilm cameras. For that exact reason, it's super versatile. I mean, I use this a lot on paid shoots, like when I go and do family portraits or when I do events, or even like, I remember I did like an engagement shoot with this before and it performed really well. Now the lens does have a max f2 aperture, which is not like crazy. I mean, f2 is pretty standard. You have lenses like the 35 1.4, which is a little bit bigger, but in my opinion, the 35-1.4, it kind of defeats the purpose of having like a smaller type of kit. It's definitely a larger lens, but I still prefer this one over it. Now, on the top of the lens here, you have the aperture markings like we showed you guys earlier. You got f2 all the way to f16, and it's super nice that it's still a clicked aperture. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's really quiet. It's super satisfying, man. And when you take the hood off, you guys, the lens is actually not big at all. It is pretty tiny. I guess you could say it's like a standard size lens, but it is weather resistant, as you guys can see there on the very bottom, making it extremely good for if you're gonna go out and shoot in like the rain or maybe even the snow. Now on the front there, you're gonna see the little branding 23mm f2, and you're gonna see it says aspherical. So this lens is an aspherical lens and it renders images quite sharp. I mean, I'm gonna put up some sample photos here on the screen, and as you can see, most of these were shot between like 5.6 and f8. The lens is extremely sharp. I mean, you're gonna get some really good image quality out of this lens. I find that it is the sharpest around f4 to like f8. But even at like f2.8 and f2, it is extremely sharp still. And like I said, it is great for portraits and probably my favorite thing, street photography. Now I'm gonna compare this lens over to some of the closer competitors like the 27 2.8 and the 18mm f2. But before we get into that, I wanna give a huge thank you and shout out to our sponsor for this episode, the good folks over at Squarespace. Squarespace is your all-in-one platform to build a beautiful online presence and run your business. So now that we are nearing the end of 2023, going into 2024, one of the best ways to get started with the new year is to create your own professional website. There is no better way to get started than with Squarespace. They have award-winning templates that you can use to get started within minutes. You even have dedicated pages for a portfolio, a gallery, an e-commerce shop, and one of my newest favorite features, the appointment scheduling tab that allows your clients to see what slots you have available so they can book you directly through your website. So if you want to get started today with your own professional website, head over to squarespace.com/kingjapes and enter promo code kingjapes at checkout, and you guys can get 10% off of your first purchase of a domain or a website. Huge thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode. Now, the other lens that I almost consider to be my favorite lens for the Fujifilm cameras, like just in general, is actually this thing right here. Oh, can't show that camera yet. So this right here, you guys, is the 18mm f2, which is a 28mm focal length equivalent. And I like this lens, but I personally don't think it is as good as the 23 f2. When you have the 23 f2 mounted, it's actually really fast with the autofocus. And the autofocus, I believe, is still by wire, but it is done internally. So you don't get this crazy loud adjustment of the lens like you do with the 18mm f2. This is it focusing right now as we speak. It's truly silent. If anything, you could barely hear it because, again, it is done internally. This makes it a great choice for anybody that is a video shooter, especially if you are, having an on-camera mic on like an X-T4 or something like that. You don't want to use a lens like the 18mm f2 that hunts and adjust with the lens moving back and forth in front of that microphone. So if you are a video shooter, I still think this is a great lens, and with the 35mm focal length, like we mentioned earlier, it is amazing. But like I was saying, autofocus is very snappy. It's super quick. I'm gonna kind of put some examples up here on the screen. And I think the one thing that surprises me about this is that even though it is an spherical lens and that it is a newer lens, it still gives you sort of this classic look that not many lenses do. Some people call this the Fujifilm 23 f2. Well, you would consider it a 35mm lens. And for good reason. With the 43mm filter thread, you could throw on different filters like a Cinebloom or a Tiffin Glimmer Glass and get some really insane looking results. And I think overall, when it comes to just the size of it and the performance and how readily available they are on the market today, if you have like an X Pro 2, an X Pro 3, maybe even like a newer Fuji like an X-T5 or XS20, this is the perfect lens to pair with it. Now, there are a couple of accessories that I own for this lens that I personally feel like not only make it look aesthetically better, but just help overall. And the first one here is this lens hood. So this is a square lens hood from a company called Fuji, I believe. Man, I might be butchering the name there, but it gives this lens almost a Leica lens look. And I think when you just look at it just straight on, it really kind of completes that rangefinder look, especially on the X Pro 2. But I'm really impressed by this lens hood because it is all metal. It's not that big, and it is a little bit taller than some of the other lens hoods out on the market. But when you put on this lens, it actually looks really good. It doesn't add that much more height. The original lens hood to me is kind of pointless. It's like this little plastic one. I'm not even gonna bother pulling it out, but it's just this little attachment. So if you guys wanna pick up this lens hood, I'm gonna leave a link in the description below. But overall, you guys, the 23mm f2, again, is my favorite lens for the Fujifilm camera system. I think overall, and you can find it under 400 bucks. It has amazing image quality. It is super sharp. You can stop this lens down to f2 and get some really nice bokeh. Of course, it's not going to be as great as the 1.4 variant, but you make up for that in size. It is weather resistant, like I said before, you guys, and overall, it is my favorite lens. But that's gonna wrap it up for me in this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think of the 23mm f2, or what you guys would consider the best lens for the Fujifilm system. With that said, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, Minolta Gang.